Alrighty, y'all. Hello and welcome to how to read Polish or something. That's what this video is titled. So it'll be linked down below. Make sure to check it out and check out the channel, How to Polish. We're going to jump straight into it. I've been exposed to a lot of Polish as of late because I've been shopping more in towards the Chicago area, going to actual European stores, which have been pretty cool and had a really positive effect on my life lately. But by European store, it's mostly an Eastern or Central European store. Central countries like Poland, Czech products, Slovakian, and then more Eastern products, lots of Russian products, Ukrainian, Serbian, Lithuanian, even down towards Macedonian and Greek products. It's really cool. I would say they have mostly Polish products as there's a huge Polish kind of culture and population in Chicago. I also recently did a video on reading Czech or looking at the Czech alphabet, and I found it very interesting. Now, of course, another Slavic language being Polish. I think I'll find this equally as interesting. Although from what I've heard and what I can see in the little I've been exposed to, it seems like Polish is kind of intimidating from the outside. But I'm going to take it on. I think this is going to be fun, and I hope you'll enjoy this with me and maybe even learn something.
This. Who created this? Is this even a real sentence, or did a cat walk on my keyboard while carefully avoiding vowels? Did Polish people eat their vowels during occupation and couldn't afford to grow new ones? Yes, and soon they're going to eat yours unless you learn to read this mess before they find out where.
I mean, to be fair, now I respect all languages. I'm very interested in a bunch of different languages. I think they're cool. Obviously, that was a joke, but this is a good joke. It does look like, from first glance, as an English speaker, it looks like someone walked on a keyboard. It does. This looks very intimidating, right? It doesn't look bizarre because I know it's a different language, and I know it does make sense. It just doesn't make sense to me. I also think right away it does look quite different from Czech, which I looked at that Czech alphabet video, and I've been looking at some basic Czech words in my off time. Right away, I see, some slight differences, and of course, major differences compared to English. Let's continue on.
Where you live. Luckily, to read this, you don't need to learn a new alphabet. This isn't Cyrillic or Asian moon runes.
Right, those would be even more intimidating because I don't know what's going on with that.
Additionally, unlike English, each letter represents a specific sound, so as soon as you learn what each letter sounds like, you win.
I like
Obviously, the ability to read does not equal the ability to understand, but it just might impress your Polish friends enough to stave off their appetite. Now keep in mind, I'm not a real teacher. I have no higher education, no real experience with teaching anyone anything, no more knowledge than a typical native speaker at best, and I didn't even pay attention in high school, so feel free to consider me the best person for the
I vibe with that. Sounds good to me.
And ultimate authority
I can relate to that.
Okay, let's have a look at the first word.
So real quick, before he explains it, he said that each letter has its own sound, and that's it. You don't have to worry about it after you know what each letter or group of letters does. And that's what I like about other languages, I think. This seems to be common throughout multiple European languages, and I like that. I guess I'm lucky that English is my native tongue. That's what I grew up speaking, so it's not hard to me. But I feel like it would be hard from the outside, at least certain aspects of English, because one letter can mean or make so many different sounds, right? And it's very bizarre in the way it works. There's kind of no rhyme or reason to it. So I feel lucky that I know it. And looking at other languages, that's one thing that's not intimidating. Once you know the sound of a letter, that's consistent, and I like that.
Wszyscy. I've heard people say it has no vowels, but it does. This letter here is a clear vowel in Polish and makes the sound I, like in the word system. While in English, it can also sound like I in Y, E in study, or even Y in yellow,
right,
because English makes no sense.
Yes.
In Polish, it always makes the sound I. The same goes for every other vowel. A, O, E, O, U. They all make one specific sound with no exceptions. There are two versions of U, but both sound exactly the same. It's dumb, but so am I, so I can't judge. Now, I would like to say it's the same for consonants, but there is one tiny exception I noticed while writing this. W in wszyscy should sound like w.
Wow, what is he saying?
Exception I noticed while writing this. W in wszyscy should.
Holy smokes. Oh, that is tough. Wszyscy. I feel like that's not right. Wszyscy. Yeah, I think it's wrong.
Sound like w, wódka,
it's going to be interesting,
but
guys.
It seems to soften up to an F. Wszyscy. I suggest ignoring this issue completely because, frankly, who gives a shit? I can hardly tell the difference myself. We know now that this is V and this is I. Time for this. Every time these two letters are together, they make the sound sh.
Okay.
English does the same thing,
With
except
SH.
instead of using S and Z, it uses S and H, like in shoe, shenanigans, or shower, which you haven't taken for too long, and I can smell you from here.
Hey.
In addition to sh, we also have a bunch of other little shits stuck together to form new sounds. Whenever you see any of these, they each make one sound, which makes the scary sentence at the beginning significantly more manageable. Now for the last sound we need to explain in the word wszyscy, this is ts. It's like a vocalization of the drum sound when your dad makes a joke. Badum ts. Except shorter.
Okay.
Cycki, cena. S
Cycki, cena.
needs no explanation, as it's exactly the same in both languages, so we're done. You should now be able to decode wszyscy.
Okay.
Like in English, where letters have dreams and can be whatever the hell they want, in Polish you simply pronounce each sound one after another and you get the word. W, sz, I, s.
W, sz, I,
C,
okay, hold on,
you get
hold
the
on.
word. W, sz, I, s, I. Wszyscy. Okay, so we've explained a bunch of stuff and decoded wszyscy.
Okay, with practice, I could see this not being so intimidating. I think I could get it. I'm not getting it right away. I know that, and I'm sure you guys will tell me. But, you know, this is just my first couple times, but I can already see it looks a lot less intimidating once you see it explained, of course. And he's right. Once you do each of these sounds kind of independent of each other and then combine them and then practice that because it is different than most words I would normally say, it does seem very manageable.
Wszyscy. Now let's continue reading the insane-looking sentence I started this video with. We already know sh. Next we have ch, which is a combination similar to English C and H in words such as children, touch, and chop.
I get that right away. That's not hard. For some reason, my brain does memorize that pretty good. Like CZ, ch, right? SZ, sh, right? That's not too hard. I can pick that up right away.
It's a bit harsher than its English counterpart, but there's also a comparable softer sound, ch. You can hear both in the word cześć. English version falls somewhere in between those two.
Cześć.
Next we have the vowel O. It's just O. It has always been O, and that's all it ever will be. Unlike in English, where it can be O in mob and rob, O in broke and smoke, but also A in stop and mom.
Yeah, that is actually crazy. When I see, it's weird because I haven't watched a English tutorial like ever because I know English, right? It's kind of interesting seeing it from an outside perspective when he's pointing out this kind of stuff. It actually looks intimidating. English looks intimidating when you know that O can have so many different sounds and different words right in front of us here, right? That is actually really weird. It kind of makes the idea of learning other languages a little less intimidating, more manageable because they might have easier, like more direct rules. Whereas English is kind of a mess,
and
right?
We started on two O's sounding like U in food, but O in door. Truly, English makes no sense and should be abolished. Moving on. D is the same in both languages and needs no explanation. J is a combination not similar to anything I can think of in English, but there are some French names you may be familiar with, such as Jean-Claude Van Damme, which seem to use the same J sound.
Oh, yeah.
J can be written in two ways, both sound exactly the same, but for any given word, only one is correct. That's dumb, but luckily we're trying to learn to read here, not write, so you don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
There are some very rare cases of R and Z not forming J, but you'll probably never encounter them, and I can only think of one example, marznąć, so I'd recommend to forget about it and act surprised when you run into this 5 years from now. Vowel E. The sound is E and nothing else. Even if a Polish person were to read the English word even, it would probably sound even, because vowels in Polish don't care about your soft tongue and refuse to bend. But you know what does bend? The sponsor of this... Nah, just kidding. I don't have a sponsor. I have not yet been szczodrze given the opportunity to sell myself out. And so we're done with the word szczodrze. Sz-o-d-ż-e. Szczodrze.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay, again, I heard him dissect it. It does make sense. Just some of these sounds combined are so hard to like process and put together and just say, right? It's also, language is so interesting that I never unfortunately learned a lot of languages growing up, which is one thing I wish we did more here in America. Hopefully that changes someday. But that's my goal, is to learn more, right? And it's funny because you don't realize how much physics go into languages, right? Breath, the way air comes out or gets trapped, tongue positioning, and, how fast or slow or how hard or soft to say something. It's really interesting and complex, and it's cool. So I'm going to hear him say that again, and I'm going to try, but I don't think I'll do well on this one.
And so we're done with the word szczodrze.
Szczodrze. No. Let me hear him say it again.
And so we're done with the word szczodrze.
Szczodrze. Szczodrze. See, do you roll the R there? Ah, man, this is so hard. I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry.
Szczodrze. Now for głaszczą. G is the same as in God, given, or game, but not G in forge. For that kind of sound, we have the combination of D and Ż. Dżem, dżuma, or for double the fun, dżdżownica. W is like W in English work or way. A is another unchanging, never-bending vowel. It's not hard, but it is in the word hard, and that's what it always sounds like. While in English, it often replaces other vowels when they come to work sick, such as O in fall, E in angry. In Polish, it's always A. We've already covered sh and ch, so next is O. It's like A with a little tail. It's cute. The same sound shows up in the word telephone. In theory, it's supposed to sound always the same, just like other vowels, but I guess it can sometimes turn into on if you don't try hard enough. Like in the word mądrość, it often sounds like mądrość.
Mądrość. Mądrość.
And no one seems to care. Now then, głaszczą is done. Time
Głaszczą?
for wstrzemięźliwe. I know this word looks ridiculous. After all, that's the reason I created this nonsensical sentence to begin with, but bear with me. We start with the already known to us w from wszyscy, kinda softened up to an F, but whatever. S and T are the same as in English. So far so good. If you can draw someone's attention while whispering pst, you can also say wst.
Yeah.
Next we have ż and e, already encountered in szczodrze, then m, the same as in English.
M.
Wstrzem. Now vowel E. Like the rest of them, it always sounds the same. Instant feat defeat. E. Easy. Next up is ę. Similarly to how A had a variant O, E has a variant ę. You take that E and you drag it a little bit. Ę. It's like you have E in thank you and ę in thank you? It makes sense if you don't think about it.
Yes.
G. Another case of two ways of writing this sound and only one being correct for any given word. One is technically shorter than the other, but it's not all that noticeable. Źle, zima.
Źle, zima.
Z and E together always make a Z sound.
Z.
As far as I know, there is no Z in Polish, and if there is, it's probably a borrowed foreign word. L, the same as in English. E, W, and E have already been covered, so we're done here. W, S, T, Ż, E, M, I, Ę, Ź, L, I, W, E. Wstrzemięźliwe. Wstrzemięźliwe. Last word in our monstrosity, pszczoły. By now you've realized that what may look like 5 consonants stuck together is actually just 3. P is the same as in English, and everything else we've already mentioned. P, sz, ch, o, ły, I. Pszczoły. Now if you were a perfect student capable of learning everything on the first try, which you are not, you would be able to now read Wszyscy szczodrze głaszczą wstrzemięźliwe pszczoły. This sentence, however, does not contain everything, so let's fill in the gaps and teach you how to read every Polish sentence there is. In theory,
Holy
anyway.
smokes.
Here's all the stuff that...
My American brain is splitting in pieces. Oh. You know, it sounded so cool, by the way, when he just says it. So I know it sounds cool, right? Another beautiful language, so interesting. But boy, oh boy. Like any language, this is not something you have a chance of even attempting and getting it right the first time. And this is not something you learn overnight. Wow.
There is. Here's all the stuff we haven't covered yet.
Oh,
and here's
beautiful.
all the stuff we haven't covered yet, excluding things identical in English. Let's start with h, you hardworking human. It's exactly the same as in English, except it has two variants. C and H together also make h. And I've been told this version is supposed to be a bit softer, but I honestly can't hear the difference, so most likely neither will you. Chleb, chiny, honor, horror. Yi. In English, you often write down this sound as Y in words such as...
Now, this is constant. Yeah, this is like something I have learned in Spanish before. A lot of languages, right? Some Czech I've looked at already as well. Yeah. This J is never like it is in English. In other languages, it's usually a Y sound or something else.
Yellow or yes.
Yes.
If you wanted to force Poles to read English against their will, you could write these words like this. Yellow, yes.
Yeah.
Ni. Two versions, one shorter, one longer, that sort of thing. You start with an N and soften it to ni. Koń, niski, danie. Rather simple.
Niski.
I'm 90% sure it's not a Monty Python reference. U. Two versions, both sound the same. Always U. Dumny, grubas, Kraków.
Grubas.
It will
Kraków.
never be A, no matter how hard.
Kraków. See, that's not hard. It's just when you get to the longer words, that's like, oh my goodness. Grubas, Kraków.
It craves English but. R. While in English, depending on the accent, R is sometimes barely even there. In Polish, it's always der, tough as nails
der.
and ready to drill holes in you. Have fun trying to pronounce.
Ours are never like that in English, but they are very present in other languages. And I feel like now I'm confident with having to do this in Spanish a lot. But yeah, this was hard to get at first, like never rolling R's, but it's a thing in most other languages. So you just have to get it. And eventually I kind of just taught myself to do it.
That, and if you do, dobra robota.
Dobra robota.
It's like a soft.
Dobra robota.
Sh, which I've already compared to English sh in shoe. Siła, siorbacz, coś. From the harshest to the softest, I drank them like this. Dzy.
Gotcha.
It's not much different than if the letters were separate, to be honest. Feels like this merge is simply the effect of reading d and z very fast. Pieniądze, dzwonek. It's not dzwonek, but dzwonek.
Yeah,
I suppose it could be considered a harsher ts. Dż. We've covered z turning into ż, and now this can merge with a d into dż. Jem, dżuma. You use a close enough sound when calling the name of the world's favorite religious figure, Jesus. In Polish, we call him Jezus. But if we were to pronounce his name the English way, we'd write it down as Jesus.
Jesus. And that's kind of cool how he shows that. Like, that's not what it is, but if they were to say it in English but write it with Polish, that kind of helps. It's actually a cool thing. This is a really, really good video. This guy's hilarious. And also, for not being a teacher and all that, I think he's doing pretty well.
Lastly, G. Like before, we had a Z turning into J, and now we merge that with D to make G.
G.
Now that I think about it, maybe this would fit the English Jesus more. Dziwny, dzik, dźwięk, Jesus?
Dźwięk.
In any case, if you've prayed hard enough and your faith in the Polish Jesus is strong, you should now be capable of reading Polish.
Is that all? Well, that was awesome. Great lesson. I don't vote with confidence that I can just read Polish all of a sudden. That would take much more practice, of course, but that was really, really cool. And you know what? For seeing that first sentence with no context, right? And then, of course, him explaining it. But like before he explained it all, that was like, what sort of a hot mess is that? From my perspective, right? Now it makes a lot more sense. For example, him acting like there's 5 or 6 consonants when it's really only 2 or 3 because you learn like the letter combinations and how they sound. You know, it all becomes a lot more manageable. And quite frankly, I think it's kind of cool. It's straightforward. It's something I could learn, I feel like, fairly quickly, at least like the basics, right? Because for some reason, I just receive it well. Once I learn it, once I see it and then like practice it, it's really easy. It sort of like makes sense to me, you know, all these different sounds. This is like when you divide them up, it's really not intimidating to me at all. I think it's pretty cool, honestly. Now, I will not, I'm sorry, but I will not be reading that. Not today. We will revisit this sometime, and I hope I can do better. Doing one, you saw later in the video when he was showing other words that I'd say weren't as intimidating as this. I think I was doing all right. Hopefully you guys can tell me what I did okay on and what I totally butchered. It's okay. I can handle it. But these, I feel like obviously is on purpose for the video to show how wild it can get and how advanced it can get. And unfortunately, these are just so many combinations that I literally would break my head in half trying to read this all at once. And I'm too embarrassed to try and do that because I know it would turn out absolutely horrible. But I did technically read them all individually, just a little bit spaced apart. So yeah, that was actually hella interesting. This will be linked down below. That was a great video. I will be looking at more from them in my own time for sure. And I hope you got a good laugh out of this one, watching me absolutely get blown away by some introduction to Polish and how to read it. That was super fun, though. I really do appreciate you watching. This was suggested by many people on a couple videos I did last month when it had to do with different languages and stuff. So I will link those at the end if you want to catch those. And I have a lot more language stuff coming up. That's going to be a focus of mine to an extent as like a side series going forward, because I really, really want to push myself into learning some basics of a lot of languages, and of course, graduating to try and learn, one or two languages more in depth to where I can do some simple speaking. But that's going to be it for this one. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, y'all. Do widzenia. I'll catch you later.